Welcome, everybody. This is the F5 Security Incident Response Team, or F5 SIRT, and you. So if you're not looking for that presentation, you're in the wrong room. Welcome, thank you for coming. I know it's been a long day, so appreciate it. So what is the F5 SIRT, other than the Security Incident Response Team? So basically, it's a group that handles security incidents for our customers. We're always there, we're always available, 24/7, 365. Basically, we help primarily, we do many things, but one of the things we primarily handle are customers who are experiencing attacks. We will work with those customers to try to mitigate those attacks, basically to get them stabilized. It's kind of a triage, right? You're under attack, stop the bleeding, kind of figure out what's going on, and then get it to a stable point where you can work under more calm conditions to remediate things instead of doing it under fire. Okay. So what we have a worldwide team of experienced professionals and F5 product specialists in all of our different products. Again, we're available 24/7, 365. We have, again, global teams. We have people on the SIRT, members of the team, and all of our global support offices. So we have somebody available speaking many different languages, working different time zones, basically people on call as well. So we try to cover all of our bases. We do have some public documentation on this. Basically, if you go to the website and search for F5 SIRT, you'll find these links. There's a Dev Central article on us when we were introduced a couple years ago now, I think, as well as official offering documentation on the F5 website under our security incident response, under our support area. So what are we designed to do? What is the Security Incident Response Team? And I probably should mention up the front that I'm actually a senior security engineer on the CERT, which is why I'm doing this talk. So the idea is to start off is we want to stop that bleeding. If you're under attack, if something's happening, our primary focus is going to be to stop that attack or mitigate it to a degree that you can respond more calmly to it. If someone's DDoSing your site, how can we help you get your services back up? If there's an exfiltration going on, how can we stop that data flow? What can we do to stop whatever is happening to get you to the point where your services are there for your customers? It might not be pretty, it might not be clean, but it's kind of field triage. You do whatever you have to do quickly to stop that attack, and then you can do the neat work and the cleanup and everything. You don't want to do the plastic surgery while the patient's bleeding out. And then we'll work, we do continue past that. We'll help with we try to transition things into our more calm support model, but we'll work with the team on developing a permanent fix. We might recommend, all right, we whip together this I rule that's stopping the attack you're experiencing, but in the long run, ASM could have stopped this from the start. So maybe we should get ASM in place, and we should, here's how we can configure that. We can get bot protection in place. We can get DDoS protection in place. We can do these things so that instead of responding with one-off Band-Aids to a given attack, we can harden the site so that you're more immune or more resistant to all kinds of attacks, which is ultimately a better approach, instead of panicking every time a new attack comes up. And we try to be the one-stop shop. We have, like I said, product knowledge and experts in all of our different product lines. We work with all the different teams within F5. We're kind of cross-domain inside the company to try to pull together whatever resources are needed to respond to these things. We also handle all the vulnerability response for F5. When we get things reported to us, either we find a vulnerability in our own code, which we consider an F5 internal vulnerability, or if some of the third-party code, we use obviously Linux as our command environment. So if things get published against Linux, or modules we use, OpenSSL, Apache, Tomcat, the different things we use within our products. When CVEs get published for those, and vulnerabilities come out, we're part of the team that looks at those things and figures out how do we handle our customer response. We don't always develop all the answers to that. We might like turn to our product development team who works with that to analyze like how we're using that code, but we help coordinate these things. If an external security researcher contacts F5 and says, hey, I was poking at big IP and I found a vulnerability, or what I believe to be a vulnerability, that goes to us. We handle those. Myself or one of my peers on the senior security level will work with those researchers. I've worked with several to get what they're reporting to us in secure fashion, research it, coordinate internally to verify what they're reporting, determine if it is a legit problem or not, and then handle our response to that. Like how do we get it fixed? How do we get it published? And work with the researchers. We coordinate with all the other departments within F5, our product development teams, our product support teams, our patching groups, all the different teams that work on things to help get our products more secure. We want to develop mitigations for things. If we find a vulnerability, whether it's in our code or third-party code, we want to get that fixed, and we want to try to get it fixed in a timely fashion. To be frank, I don't feel we've always hit that target, but it's a goal, and it's something that I personally push on a lot. I'm personally responsible for all of our vulnerability coordination. That's my job. So I work with that day in, day out on trying to get these things fixed in a hurry and get them out there. All of the CVEs that are unique to F5, if it's a third-party CVE, like a CVE gets published against Linux or OpenSSL or whatever, that's the third party. We'll analyze that and determine if we are affected by it, and we publish what we call security advisories on Ask F5 documenting our exposure. But if it's an F5 vulnerability, we have to issue a CVE for that ourselves. For the past couple of years, if a CVE has been issued, there's a very good chance I'm the guy who assigned it. We are a CNA for MITRE, which is basically we are given a block of CVEs that we then issue to ourselves as needed, and I am the guy who coordinates that. So we've been issuing our own CVEs for a while now and getting those published. We're also doing cleanup on our code base, pushing to get anything documented. F5, our philosophy and my personal philosophy, and since I'm the guy in charge, it's kind of our philosophy, is that we want to be as open as possible with our customers. So if we have a vulnerability, I will always push to get it out there, and obviously get a fix out, but tell customers that here's a fix, here's what it's for, here's why you want to install it. Not all vendors do that. There are some vendors who are quite happy to publish fixes and not put CVEs on things because it can make them look bad. I believe that it's your networks to make decisions about using our products. In order to make an informed decision about what to do on your network, you have to be informed. And I believe that we should publish things to allow our customers to make informed decisions. I think it's the right thing to do. Communicating to you when we find these things. We publish the Ask F5 security advisories. We send things out to the security mailing list. Again, I've sent a lot of the stuff to the security mailing list that goes out to our customers. So if you're not subscribed to that, or somebody in your organization isn't subscribed to the security mailing list, I encourage someone to be the contact there. If you go to Ask F5, there's like a subscriptions page. We have a tech news list, security mailing list, some other stuff. The security list is very focused. It's basically when we publish security advisories, or F5 security advisories at least. We're looking at possibly putting all of the third-party stuff on there too, but there's kind of logistics to handle there. As well as when we release signature updates for like ASM signatures or engine updates or fraud prevention updates. Security-related stuff, just to generalize it, goes to the security mailing list. So it's not a lot of high volume traffic, and it's generally fairly important. That's the subscription center URLs. The first one is the subscription center for the mailing lists. The second URL there is, if you go to Ask F5, one thing, I know a lot of people aren't aware of this, but if you go to Ask F5, you can create custom RSS feeds. And you can create a custom RSS feed for, say, just new security advisories that get published. Which is quite useful. Because then you'll get every security advisory that's published, or you can actually see new or updated. There's different options on things. So you can narrow it down. And there's other filters you can put on it too, by product and other things too. So it's actually pretty cool. It's probably even more focused and more informative than the mailing list. The mailing list is mainly going to give you links to the security advisories, where the RSS feed will take you right into them. So we've seen all kinds of things. The SIRT as a separate entity has existed for almost 3 years now, I think. I've been with the team for almost 3 years. And I was the second guy on the team. So we've seen all kinds of stuff. We see a lot of DDoS. I mean, that's probably the number one thing we see, just like layer 3 to layer 7. It's the easiest thing for script kiddies to do. And you can rent attack capacity and just throw volumetric attacks at somebody. So lots of DDoS attacks. We see exploitation attempts. New vulnerabilities get published, and sure enough, right after those vulnerabilities get published, we'll have customers say, hey, we're seeing this traffic. I'm like, yeah, it's the exploit of the week, and somebody wrote a Metasploit script for it, and now everyone's poking at every site out there. We see brute force attacks, all kinds of things. You've probably seen in the past couple of years all these password dumps, X million passwords published because somebody's aggregated all these sites that have been breached. And then people write scripts that take all those username and password combinations and just bang on every site out there to see if somebody used the same username and password combination someplace else. So you see kind of primitive brute force attacks all the time. We have seen data breaches. We've seen people get compromised. Usually it's because of misconfiguration or if the device itself gets compromised. I will tell you right now, the absolute number one, probably nearly every exploit I've ever seen of one of our boxes is because somebody left a default password on the box. They put a big IP on the network, they exposed it to the internet, they had root default, admin, something like that on the box. And sure enough, 30 seconds later, there was malware on that box. It's really a bad idea. Or they've put really easily guessable passwords on the box. I mean, if your password is password or anything like that, don't put it on the internet. Don't turn it on. It's gonna get exploited. And in fact, a change we made in 14, because we saw this so much, a change that our group pushed for and is now in 14 that just released, you can't leave the default passwords on the device anymore. The first time you boot the box, it makes you change the password. And that was a change we've been pushing for a while because we got tired of seeing people get caught by this. It's one of those things that's human nature, and no matter how many times we tell people change your passwords, don't leave default passwords on boxes, don't put default devices on the internet, it just wouldn't stop. So now you can't. Obviously the first time you boot it, you could, but pretty quickly you're forced to put a new password in that box. And we try to enforce decent passwords. We've talked about it, but we don't really force password. We're not going to tell you what your organization's policies have to be for passwords. Part of me would like to actually see us put like a password checker on there and change the password and go, no, you can't use password as your password. But there's that line you have to walk between what do you dictate to your customer and what they can do with your box on their network. But at least now we're forcing password changes on install. We do see 0 days once in a while. 0 days get a lot of attention, and for those who aren't familiar with the slang, a 0 day is basically a brand new vulnerability that's just been released. It's day 0. Nobody's like, the vendor hasn't had a chance to look at it yet. It just got announced, it just got published, and it's the newest thing, and it's also the most likely to get in because no one's had a chance to patch for it yet. No one's even had a chance to develop a patch for it yet. But while they get a lot of press and they get a lot of attention and it's like, oh, hey, someone dropped a 0 day today, it's gonna be this big deal, we don't actually see that many attacks. It's actually not. The most attacks are in things that have been known about for a long time. There are a lot of tools out there using those attacks, and people get compromised because they haven't patched the box. They're still running 3-year-old versions of software. They're still using bad passwords, whatever. It's the Hollywood thing is, I just found this brand new way to get in and I'm gonna hack the Gibson because I know the latest thing, but the truth is most attacks are using things that have been out there for years. And we do see malware on boxes, usually, again, a box that's been compromised. In every case I think I've ever seen where malware is on the box, it also turned out to have bad credentials on the box, like really weak passwords. And it is a Linux device. I mean, the command line area, the control plane is Linux-based. And so Linux malware will see it as a Linux box and will install itself on there. It doesn't affect the data plane. I've never seen any malware on a big IP that actually exploits the fact that it's a big IP. So I've seen malware on big IP boxes where it's using the box as a DDoS robot, just to run DDoS. But it's always just been using the management interface because it doesn't know that it's on a big IP. I've always said that the day someone figures out how to write a malware bot that takes advantage of a Viprion's data plane, they're going to generate a lot of traffic. So how do you get to us? How do you use the F5 SIRT? You open a standard support ticket. Basically, you go through F5 support. They've been trained and informed that certain things, we have a process internally, which is the ESRP, or the Emergency Security Response Process. If someone calls in and says, I'm under attack, or explicitly invokes, hey, I need the ESRP or I need the F5 SIRT, they're supposed to follow a process internally to escalate things to the SIRT to get us engaged. It's included in the contract. There's no extra cost to this. Any customer can do this. We'll even advise customers. We've had customers open cases and ask for SIRT assistance because maybe they've already mitigated the attack. Like, okay, we've got or they saw an attack that took 24 hours and went away, but all right, we didn't know we didn't know how to respond to this. Well, how do we stop this from happening again? And we'll work with those customers and advise them, okay, here's some tools we have. Here's, what license do you have? Okay, you've got ASM. We can configure this, or APM, or AFM, or whatever we have. We can do an iRule, whatever it takes. And basically, you just come through support and either ask for it, or if you're saying I'm under attack, they should bring us in. Never hurts to ask.
What support level do you need?
What was that?
What support level?
Anything.
Is it premium support or is it?
Anything. ESRP is for every customer. That's one of basically, it's included in any support contract. In fact, technically, really, you don't even have to have a support contract. If you have a big IP and you call up and I'm under attack, our policy is help you stop the attack first, figure out your entitlement later. Our focus is on security. And if we can provide, and obviously there's a business aspect to that. If somebody doesn't have a support contract and we can provide a good support experience, maybe they'll buy a support contract. But we've never really had anybody abuse it so far. We've been doing this for a couple of years. We do keep an eye out for that. We don't want people to start, I don't have any entitlement, so I'm going to start claiming, the sky is falling every time I need assistance with something. But we will keep an eye. We do keep track of who opens ESRP tickets, so eventually we probably notice a pattern. So it provides a single point of contact. Like once it's an ESRP and once it's being handled by a security engineer, that person will become a single point of contact for that security incident, at least that SR. If other teams need to be brought in, it goes through them as a nexus to bring other teams, development teams, other support teams in. We try to provide, the focus there is rapid response, because obviously if you're under attack, you don't want to wait. Again, we're looking for quick mitigations to stop that bleeding. It might not be the most optimum, the best performing patch, the whatever. Often we'll go, okay, how can we characterize this attack? Okay, here are certain values we can look for in the attack traffic. Here's an iRule that'll block that. It's not pretty, and it's not as efficient as, say, a good ASM rule or something that could block it, but it's fast. And once you've got that in place, then you can configure ASM. Then you can take a breather, and you can really think about, okay, what do we need to do? Do we need to change window? Do we need this stuff? So it's basically designed for what's the best way we can stop this. The criteria there is speed is an overriding criteria, not necessarily elegance. Again, if you're under attack, speed is a concern. And we have links and processes to, if customers need help above and beyond what we can do, we have professional services can be engaged. Like if the customer's never used ASM and they needed ASM configured from the ground up, it's not really something support is equipped for, because there's a lot of details that can go in there. But professional services can come on site and work with the customer on doing that. So we can engage professional services if that's what the customer wants. We have for those of you who aren't familiar, we have our Silverline product offering, which is our as a service type offering. We have DDoS protection as a service. We have WAF as a service. If you're experiencing a high volume DDoS attack, there could be no way to mitigate that locally. If it's a high enough volume that your pipe is full, nothing we can do on that big IP is going to save you. Because even if you reject the traffic at the big IP, if your pipe coming into that big IP is blocked, you're done. The DDoS attack has worked. Silverline we can redirect your traffic through our cloud service filter out the DDoS traffic in the cloud and only sends you the filtered traffic. And that's available. There's different contracts for that. They can turn that up within an hour. If a customer's experienced a DDoS attack, we've had customers get onto Silverline within an hour of calling. And there are different options and stuff there, but we have a whole team who handles Silverline, the Silverline team. We have liaison with them. So if we have a customer, we've done this a couple times. The customers have been experiencing severe DDoS attacks. They've angered some hacker group, or somebody thought it would just be funny to take their site offline. We can get them on Silverline, and Silverline can absorb a couple of terabytes worth of data. So it can really handle a pretty good sized DDoS attack. And we have other, we can refer to things like, okay, right now you have what's our licensing? Good. The basic license is the good license. Okay, so you don't have ASM, you don't have these other things. But given your network and what you're experiencing, we highly recommend that you talk to your account team and get an ASM license, because that would protect you from this stuff in the future. We can connect you to the account team and explain to the account team what we saw and why we as engineers are like, okay, this is what would help them, this is what they need. Can you work with the customer to figure out how to solve their needs? Basically, in the end, we want the customer to be safe and happy. And that's what our focus is to provide the customer with options, get that initial mitigation done, help them with remediation, make recommendations for how to be better prepared in the future. And the customer, again, it's the customer's network in the end. So they decide, this is what we can afford, this is what we want to do, this is what we're willing to do. But all we can do is make recommendations. So as I said, to contact us, you open a support case. You can either, if it happens to meet the criteria, they should automatically bring us in, or you can basically explicitly ask for us. You go ask for the ESRP. If you find a vulnerability in our products, if you're a customer, you can do this through a support case. Hey, I think I found a bug, I think I found a vulnerability, and it will get routed to us. If you're an external person of some kind, you don't want to go through a support case as a customer, or if you have third-party researchers or anything, we have a page where you can do report a vulnerability, and that will come routed to us. And we have all of the policies behind this are K4602 on ASCII 5. That's the link at the bottom, but it's simple enough. You just look for that K4602. And that's our overview of our F5 security vulnerability response policy. So who is the team? Basically, who are we? So we have a good mix of people on the team. We have a core team of currently 7, I believe, security engineers. Myself is one of those 7, scattered between the US, EMEA, and APCJ. And then we have a larger team of what we call the F5 SIRT security specialists, which are a team selected from all of our support organization. And I think we got 70 some people on that specialist right now, scattered throughout all of our organizations. Both of our, Warsaw, we've got people in Warsaw and Chertsey and Lowell, Spokane, Seattle, Singapore, New Zealand, Tokyo, Beijing. I think all of our support offices, we have some F5 CERT security specialists. So we try to get things spread out. Everybody on the team is required, the specialists are all required to have at least a 200 level F5 certification, like a 201. All the senior specialists and all the engineers have 300 levels, 1 or more 300 level certification. A lot of us have external certifications as well. I'm GCIH, and which is certified, SANS, certified incident handling, and what's the other one I have? CFA, GCFA, so certified forensic analyst. So there are different people on our teams that have different certifications. We have some guys with pen testing certifications and things. Ongoing certification and training is like a focus of our team. So as I was saying, we have 3 engineers currently, 2 in the Americas, 2 in EMEA, 3 in APCJ. We're probably going to be adding, we're looking at other headcount in some of the other regions. We just went from 2 to 3 in APCJ, so we're probably going to up the other regions too. Again, over 70 specialists, I remember off the top of my head. So like I was saying, as far as certifications go, I got ahead of myself. We have a couple of people who have CISSP. I used to, but it lapsed. I have, like I said, the GCIH and the GCFA. We have some of my colleagues have these other certifications that are listed here. Those are all active currently on our team. Somebody or another has those. 300 and 400 level. We have a couple of people now who've actually achieved our 400 level certification, which is my ultimate goal. I'm currently at 300 levels. The 400 level requires you, for those who aren't familiar with the F5 certification process, you have to get your 101, your 201, then you have to have the 301, 302, 303, and 304, and then you can get the 401. So we have, I think, 2 people on our team now who've gotten the 401. A lot of years of experience across the team. I've been with the company 8.5 years. One of the guys I work with has been with the company for 13 years, I think, almost 14 now. So we've got a good number of years of experience across the team. And it's a pun, and I like it. We're security conscious, and we're also F5 security conscious. One of our goals of our team is we are the thorn in everyone's side. Whenever we do something, we're introducing new products, new stuff, the F5 SIRT, the security engineers especially, are kind of like, that's great, how's it secured? How are we going to secure that? How do the customers secure this? What do we do with security? Is that secure? I'm sure a lot of development teams are really sick of hearing that from us at this point. But that's our focus. I mean, that's what we're designed to do is kind of make sure that whatever we introduce, whatever we do, that we're doing things in a secure way, that we're following best practices, that we're doing things right by the customer. And we're very much customer advocates on security, that we want. I've pushed for a number of changes in the product myself on improving our defaults, making things more secure by default. Things, well, all the customer has to do to secure things is tweak all these things. It's like, but why aren't they set that way by default? If the customer doesn't want to be secure, they can disable this stuff. And some of that's just legacy. F5 came out of the networking side of the world more, and security has become more and more important. And so sometimes the design decisions that were made for something that was developed 10 years ago might not be the same as they were today. So sometimes you have to go in and say, we need to relook at this. We have to say maybe the defaults, sure, it was quick and easy and would work. It would always work by default, but always work often means not secure. Maybe you need to make it secure by default, and then if the customer is like, oh, well, I can't use a secure protocol because of this, well, then they can knowingly disable it. It's a lot easier to have something not work, or more conscious to have something that you have to deliberately make a decision to reduce your security posture instead of, oh, it's working, I forget about it. And it's easy to forget at that point to say, now I need to go in and make sure things are secure. So a lot of my push has been making sure we do things secure by default or heading in that way. And I keep getting ahead of myself. So that's part of it is we're dedicated to constant improvement. We're always trying to improve our products, improve F5's security posture. We do a lot of education internally. A lot of the talks, like I just did a talk in this room, the last panel, and I think a couple of you are in here, on the crypto basics, security basics. There was actually going to be another guy who was going to be doing it, but he couldn't make it, so I took over for him. But I'm doing 2 talks here tomorrow on Cypher Suites and TLS 1.3. And both of those talks are actually public versions of talks I originally did internally for other teams in F5. We do a monthly security presentation, usually the 3rd Thursday of every month internally. We do a webinar internally that our group organizes on some security topic. We have a weekly security newsletter that our group writes. We do a lot of things internally to try to raise security awareness and just the kind of security consciousness of everyone in the company. Our group itself, as I said, we go through very regularly training, internal and external, and certifications, both F5 and external certifications. I just got back. I literally was in Vegas until yesterday afternoon, no, Monday night. I got home. I was at Black Hat and DEF CON in Las Vegas. A couple of my colleagues from the team were there too. We try to go to conferences, regional and the big conferences like those, to kind of keep up what's happening out there, what's going on in the security community, both on the attacker side and the defender side. You can't defend against what you don't know about. I saw some really interesting stuff at Black Hat and DEF CON. I'm definitely going to be now, once I'm done with agility, I kind of bounce straight to agility. I'm going to be spending some time digging into. There was a presentation on using large data sets and data mining to compromise RSA public keys. That looked really interesting. And it's like this, it's like a 45-minute presentation, so I need to find their paper and stuff that they're publishing and read it, because there was a lot of dense data in there about how this works. And if what they're saying is true, RSA public key systems could basically be done. And their recommendation was basically use elliptic curve public key instead of RSA. So we try to do a lot to gather and disseminate security information within F5, as well as working with our customers. So as a final word, if you're under attack, or basically when would you engage us as a customer? If you're under attack or you've been threatened with attack, we've seen a number of customers being extorted or attempted extortion. Pay me X Bitcoin, it's always Bitcoin. Pay me X Bitcoin by this time, the next 24 hours, or I'm taking your site offline. And then you're faced with a choice, like, do I pay? And often they ask for what's relatively a small amount for companies. Like they're asking for 0.02 Bitcoin or something like that. It's like not much money in the end. But do I pay and hope this is, and they don't attack me? Is this real in the first place, or is it just, a bluff? Do they actually have the mechanism to attack me? Are they going to attack me anyway? Even if they do attack me, do they have the power to do anything to my site? And so, we've helped customers, I personally would say you don't want to pay, because once you pay, you mark yourself as somebody willing to pay, and the next time they're probably not going to ask for such a small amount. But you have to be ready then if you're not going to pay. What if it is a legit threat? And so we've had customers come to us and say, hey, I've been threatened this attack. If I don't pay them by tonight, they're going to attack me tomorrow. What can we do? And we've done, tried to get okay, what can we do? You got ASM, we can put some IR rules in place, we can put rate limiting in place, we can do all these, bot protection and things. What can we turn on now that will at least better position you? Because often you don't know, what's the attack going to be? You don't know until it happens. So try to get you positioned for it. How can you use F5 devices to mitigate an attack? Again, it's the individual customers. What devices do you have? What licenses do you have? What are you willing to do? What are you allowed to do? Unfortunately, your customers sometimes are like, I can put an IR rule in place, but I'm not allowed to change my ASM configuration without a 3-week review process. It's okay, well, we can look at IR rules. How are the services protected? And we also look beyond the F5. When we're looking at mitigating an attack, we don't just focus on what can we do in the F5. We'll ask, are there firewalls in this chain? Are there upstream proxy devices? What other devices are in the network? Because we're not concerned with selling F5 product. We're not concerned with making F5 look good. We're concerned with stopping the attack and helping the customer. And if that means we can look at your router and say, can we black hole this traffic at the upstream router? And whether that makes Cisco the hero or not, we don't care. It's like we want to help the customer, not make F5 look good. Have you found a vulnerability in the deployment? Again, customers are playing with something, sometimes they're like, I'm not sure this is right. I think we found a bug or there's a vulnerability. So oftentimes we determine it's a configuration change can be made, but it's a legitimate question. And we have customers ask us all the time, okay, this CVE just got published. Last week it was 2018 5390, the new Intel Linux bug thing. And we got a lot of questions about that. Okay, this just got published, is F5 vulnerable? And so, we have to get a response out to that. Those are all things that our team is focused on handling. So, kind of redundant slide because the whole presentation was on that. But any questions? Yep. We have. I know that, I got some of these cards I should be giving out too. I know that in some situations we've done things where our ASM team, our ASM team has whipped up some kind of custom signature and put out an article on like Dev Central. Because, and we've also, one of the things, I don't know if you've noticed, anybody who uses ASM, we've been publishing what they call ASU, the ASM signature updates, a lot more often now. It used to be they were only published every few weeks. And so it would be, hey, a new attack comes out, where we have to develop a signature, it has to go through this verification, validation process and testing. It took too long. To be perfectly honest, it took too long. So we started to focus on how do we speed that loop up? How can we get things out? So now we're seeing a lot of cases where we can get ASUs out like with the next day after an announcement comes out for something. We're focused a lot more on trying to be conscious that speed is a factor in dealing with these attacks. And so you're seeing, I think, less of us publishing the custom signatures, or sometimes we'd publish an iRule on Dev Central or something saying, hey, this attack just got out. While we're working on a signature update, here's something you can do right now. Or here's a custom signature, you can just cut and paste this and drop it into your ASM. You're not seeing as much of that from us, but that's because we're speeding up the ASU process and getting the damn signatures, I just shouldn't have said that, but getting the signatures out there faster, which kind of makes it moot to put out these custom things.
Does your team look for compromises that your customers may not already know about? So are you scouring, looking, like say somebody in another country may have compromised a customer, they don't know yet, and you find it for sale? And do you let them know, or is that something that your team offers?
Not explicitly as like a particular thing we do actively. If we do find that a customer is compromised in some way through other work we're doing, we will definitely notify somebody. Like we're not gonna be like, oh look, the customer's owned. Oh, too bad for them. Like we'll reach out, and sometimes we might reach out to their account team and say, by the way, hey, one of your clients, we've noticed this, that one of your customers is vulnerable to this. There's some interesting stuff in there about customer privacy and customer data retention and things. Because things we have discussed would be like scrubbing through iHealth data, looking for vulnerabilities. But we don't retain iHealth data beyond what's necessary. If a customer uploads iHealth, their QK views to iHealth, it's used for a support case or something. Once that support case is closed, it gets purged. Because we don't want to put the customer at risk of having iHealth compromised and having all their data in there. Which unfortunately does limit you. If we had like a year's worth of data in iHealth, we could do a lot more scrubbing on things, like do big data analysis. We do try to find things, and one of the things, like our continuing education for the support department, and this is an issue, I think it's not just F5, it's everywhere I've ever worked. People get blinders. So a customer calls in about an issue. The support person working the case is focused on that issue. The QK view says, by the way, this box has malware on it. So we kind of keep educating people, like if you see that kind of thing, even if the customer hasn't asked about it, tell them. Because a lot of customers don't bother looking through all of the reporting in iHealth, even the stuff that says critical, because that would be marked as critical. And basically telling support, like, it is our responsibility, like, if you notice it, you say something. And that's something, there's been a couple cases where that hasn't happened, so we keep reiterating this of, it's gotten caught further up the chain or something, but it's like, hey, why didn't you catch this? Oh, well, the customer didn't ask about it. It doesn't matter. Tell the customer about it.
So what is it, after the server's been engaged, so what does it look like in terms for the customer? Do they sit in on the customer's incident response team meetings, or just have remote traditional support stuff?
Usually what happens in there, like as far as the case goes in the customer portal, I don't think you see anything differently. Internally, the type, we use a Siebel system internally for ticketing. So the type gets changed to ESRP, and internally the tracking changes. Generally what happens then is, like if you have customer calls or support calls because of this incident, you'll have an F5 SIRT security specialist will take over the case and will be running the case with you. And in most cases, but not all, depends on so basically we try to be reasonable about things. So like if it's a question that's really easily, readily handled by the specialist, The specialists will work with the customer and they'll just deal with it. If there is any need at all, even suspected need of a higher level engineering, they'll pull a security engineer in. And so the security engineer could be talking to the customer as well. Our policy is basically err on over-responding and then backing off if you don't need to. So, if it's kind of like, I'm not really sure I can handle this, get a security engineer involved. The security engineer might provide some pointers, and then at that point, like the specialist can deal with it. But it's better to have them engaged rather than cause a delay. Any other questions?
Is there any public procedure for this?
Yeah, where is it? It's way back at the front somewhere. Okay, yeah, those links. So like the security incident response team, our SIRT, that's like our public official, hey, we exist thing on the F5 website. And then there's an article that was kind of an intro to the SIRT when we went public. Basically, we existed for a while internally. Like I said, the team was originally formed as a standalone organization. This is what, 2018? Began in 2016, end of 2015. I joined the team in January of 2016. And that's around the time it was just gelling. At that point, there was my colleague Malcolm was on the team, and that was it. It was like a manager and Malcolm, and then I joined. So we existed for a while, kind of working out, like one of the first things we did as a team, as we assembled the team, was we wrote the ESRP, the policy that we still use. So we hammered that out, like how is this gonna come into play? How do we handle these things? What do we wanna offer? So it took some months to get all that hammered through, work it through all the approval levels and everything, and get it interfaced as an official policy. And then we worked with it for a while internally without really advertising it to work out the kinks. And then eventually we went public with it and basically said, hey, this is now something that we've been doing for a while, but we're ready to actually call attention to it. Because it was a new thing for F5 to have this overlay team and to do security, and we wanted to make sure that we had the kinks worked out before we said open the floodgates. And it's been, I don't know how many cases we get a month on average right now, probably a couple a week or so, ESRP cases on average, and sometimes it's worse than others. There are times when we have none, and then other weeks where we'll get a slew of them. It's one of those Murphy's Law things where they all hit at once.
How long does it take to remediate an incident on average?
In many cases, within a couple of hours, we'll have a remediation in place, or mitigation, I should say. Remediation is after the fact, right, cleaning up, but mitigation is like the initial response. So it depends, like a lot of the things we see are basic DDoS attacks or scraping things or brute force type stuff. And so a lot of the time, it'll come down to, and a lot of our customers these days have the better or best licenses and they have ASM available. A lot of people aren't using it. And in many cases, it's a matter of all we have to do is turn on proactive bot defense and DDoS protection. Oh, look, the attack's mitigated. So in a lot of cases, it's pretty simple.
Is DDoS part of the solution, or do you rely on a single line for that?
Well, unless it's a volumetric, thank you. Unless it's a volumetric attack, that is too big for the big IP to handle. Like, we can often do DDoS on the big IP, up to a certain level. If it's such a big attack that it actually overwhelms a big IP, which we don't actually see that often, unless it's like a really low-end big IP, like a 2200 or something. But the problem. But that's what I said, that's the thing that we see happen when a DDoS is being successful and we can't mitigate it locally. It's usually because the data pipe is full. It's line rate, yeah. Yeah, at that point, like, because if if the pipe between your upstream provider and your data center is full and it's being choked, there's nothing we can do in the data center. It's happening, you're too late at that point. So there are ways to mitigate that upstream. Sometimes if we can characterize the attack traffic and it's not a well-distributed attack, and we see this, sometimes you can go up to your upstream provider and say, hey, can you black hole all the traffic from this subnet? And they can do it on their exit router that feeds you, and then it's done.
Give the ability to cut temporary keys to mitigate an attack in case of a customer only having one hand.
Temporary key, you mean like SSL keys?
No, like license keys. Like if they only
Oh, yes. Yeah, we've done that. In fact, the case I handled recently, I can't give too many details, but basically we gave them a demo IPI key for IP intelligence, the representational stuff, to mitigate things, or to help, as an attempt to mitigate things as part of the overall solution, and buy time so that they could then talk to their account team about longer term stuff. Basically, we use demo keys. Like there's demo keys available. We can generate like 30 or 45 day lifespan. Right. No, it's that at that point, part of it's for speed. Like we can whip demo keys out, but getting a real key issued has to go through an official process. And so yeah, it's kind of that. Should you use demo keys in production? Probably not. But if it's a choice between that and not having the ability to use a feature to mitigate something you're under attack with right now, you use demo key. And you don't have to use it for obviously for that full 30 days. You can get your account team involved. Maybe the next day they can get you some real keys. But in the meantime, it's a fast response. Basically we look at it a lot like a triage solution. It's the field hospital type thing. We're not looking to do the prettiest work, but we want to get the patient stable. And if that requires unconventional tactics, we'll use unconventional tactics.